so today is an all matte tutorial using my beloved Viseart Grande Pro Volume 1 eyeshadow palette. I received a request from one of my lovely subscribers, so big shout out to you. Thank you for requesting more tutorials using this palette, and I hope you enjoy yours. This look is actually using the palette in multiple ways. So all of the eyeshadows that I used are from the palette, but I also did my brows, my lips, and my complexion using this palette. I set my entire makeup. I didn't use any other powders at all. I just used this palette. So basically this entire face is brought to you by the Viseart Grande Pro. I hope that you enjoy this tutorial and enjoy seeing how you can use these pigments in many different ways. If you are new, go ahead and subscribe, and let's go ahead and get this started. Okay, so I've already primed my lids using the Smashbox eye primer. I'm going to take this fluffy brush. This is from the Morphe brand, the E27 brush. I use this quite often. And I'm going to go right in and set that eye primer using this shadow up in the corner. And we're just going to pat, pat, pat all the way. I'm going to jump into this gray shade down under with the same brush, and I'm going to lightly blend into my natural crease area, but I'm being nice and generous with my circular motions in order to create a gradient and a big smoky blown out effect. Using very, very light pressure and blending in little rotating circles. I'm gonna dip in a couple more times and just repeat this step until I am satisfied with the pigmentation and the overall feel of the gray. I'm going to go down the line and jump into this slightly deeper gray. We're going to layer this right on top. Again with the circular motions. That lighter gray base that we applied is going to act as a transition from the deeper gray we're going into now and my skin tone. And we're going to keep doing the same technique until we are at that really dark shadow. If you need to, you can always go back into the skin tone shade we use to blend the edges. I find that Viseart shadows blend themselves, so it's not very necessary. And then one more down the line. You can do the same technique with any of these rows. And we are just going back in again with the little circular motions. And then into the navy. This time I'm going to be a little bit more careful and keep that kind of low into the crease, more so in the lid area, just because I don't want the navy to get everywhere. For doing that really dark lid, I'm going to take a black kohl. This one is the gel liner from Marc Jacobs, and I'm just going to tight line and put this in my waterline. And then I'm taking this liner and dabbing it onto the lid. Before that dries, I'm going to take a flat synthetic brush. This one is from the Electric palette from Urban Decay. And I'm just going to move that product around and lightly blend it. It really isn't going to be perfect. It just has to not be so choppy. This will just ensure that the shadows we put on top are going to look nice and opaque. So with that same flat shader brush from the Electric palette from Urban Decay, I'm going to go into the dark brown shade up here before we go into the black. I'm just patting this right on top onto the lid. And again, we're going to take that same brush and same color and pat that onto the lower lash line, right on top of the liner we placed. Going back to our first brush, the E27, and I'm just going to use little circular motions to blend away the edges. And then to finish off the intensity, I'm going to go into the black. I'm going to be really careful and place that right by the lash line. I didn't really have any fallout, but just in case, I'm going to wipe away if there's any little particles. We don't want it to mess with our clean slate of our foundation. I'm going to brighten the inner corners with a matte shade. So I'm taking my IT Cosmetics for Ulta Airbrush Precision Smudger Brush number 124. And I'm going to go into the stark white of the palette. I'm going to pat that right into the inner corner, creating a nice gray with the shades that we have underneath. I'm going to amp up the intensity just a little bit more. Nobody does white shadows as well as Viseart. So that really brightened without losing the gray tones. I just put on some mascara. I also primed my skin using my Touch in Sol No Problem Pore Filling Primer. And I'm going to go ahead and use a luminous foundation since my eyeshadow is all matte. This guy is the Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk Foundation. I just featured this in my monthly favorites. It's the best for my skin. I'm also going to use the brush I recommended in my favorites video. This is the Sephora 56. Now, because of how dark the smoky eye is, I want to make sure I create a really nice clean slate for my foundation. I don't want any discoloration in the skin messing with bouncing back and forth between the eye look and confusing the eye. It'll just make the whole look so much more messy. We're gonna definitely have to use concealer because of my redness and all that. I wanna make sure everything looks nice and clean. Otherwise, it's just gonna look a mess. I'm going to take a little bit of my Becca Brightening Color Corrector for the under eyes. And with my Sephora 57 Airbrush Concealer Brush, I'm going to be really careful underneath the eyes. We really want to cancel out any blue tones underneath the eyes because we have blue in this deep dark smoky eye. Otherwise it's really going to pop out at you. So let me go ahead and just carefully pat that on all the way underneath. We can always go back and touch up the eyeshadow, but you really just want to make sure this looks nice and clean. Alternatively, you could always wait to do your lower lash line until after you've done your under eye concealer. I just didn't want any fallout. Before going in and making sure it's nicely blended, I'm going to take a little bit of my Makeup Forever Ultra HD Invisible Cover Concealer. I'm pulling out all the big guns. Don't need too much of this, and I'm just going to make sure that coverage is there. And this is also a shade lighter, so it's going to really brighten. I'm dying to do my brows, but before I do that, let me just set things with powder. For setting today, I'm going to use the Wet n Wild little setting brush from the holiday set. I'm going to use this guy up here, the one I used for setting the primer. I'm going to tap off the excess because we don't need too much. I'm going to lightly set underneath, looking a little ghostly. So I'm going to go into this shade here. I'm going to blend that right underneath. Because I'm such a dry skin type, I don't need too much powder. So I'm just dipping in once and patting. I'm not gonna set everything. With the same brush, I'm going to take a dash of this guy right here. We're gonna use this to bronze. In a buffing motion, I'm just taking that and pushing that into the skin, hugging the cheekbone. I'm going to take a dash of this guy and this guy and mix those two, just a tiny bit. I'm going to amp up that contour a little bit. Just right at the base of the hairline. Bringing that forward. And you would obviously want to adjust the color based off of your skin tone. I'm going to take a little bit on the lower part of the nose and just lightly sweep it upwards on the sides of the nose to tie everything together. And underneath the lower lip. And then I want to take a look at blush. So I'm thinking this guy right here mixed with a little bit of this guy. So these two mixed. Again, all with the same brush. I think when I use the same brush for an eye look or for the face, it all melts together really nicely. Of course, if you're using really different shades, you might want to use different brushes so that you're not creating a muddied look. Don't want everything to look grayed out. But for buffing all these types of shades together, I think it looks really pretty. I'm going to bring that up onto the temple, like right where the eyebrows are. And then I'm going to take that little fluffy brush, it's not so little actually, but the E27, and we're going to go back into that last pink I used. And I'm going to lightly bring that into the edge of our eye look, all the way around. I love when the blush ties into the eye. I think it just creates such a beautiful unity. And I'm using the lightest amount of pressure. Just like that. For the brows, I don't want to do like really stark brows. We have so much going on with the eyes. So I'm gonna use a very light hand. This guy here. Just softly making my brow a little bit wider. Okay, I'm gonna just set my brows with my Gimme Brow. Now I know there was a recall for Gimme Brow and they're not selling it right now. You can use any brow gel or whatever you normally use for your brows. I'm really hoping it comes back soon because I'm running out and it is my favorite brow gel. Because it makes me look like I actually have brow hairs. And in order to keep this nice and soft, I'm not going to carve out my brows today. I feel like this is becoming a very long video. I'm just like sitting here taking my time, enjoying life. Okay, so I actually have to get ready for work. I have like a closing shift today. Okay, so I literally just threw on a lip balm. This one is from Caudalie. I'm gonna go ahead and taking the other side of that brush I used for the eyes from the Urban Decay Electric palette. I'm gonna use the little side. And for lips, I really want to go in with this shade. I thought it would make a really pretty lip shade. So I'm going to take that and mix in a dash of my gloss from Pat McGrath. It's a clear gloss. My friend gave this to me. It was in a set. You can use any clear gloss or mixing medium. And I'm going to mix that pigment into the gloss. And then I'm just going to paint that on. I'm using very little gloss and mostly pigment because I don't want it to be super shiny. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and bring down all the powderiness with my MAC Fix Plus. That feels and looks much better. Okay, so I think I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm not gonna do any highlight of any kind, no shimmer on the eyes or in the complexion. And the gloss was so little that I feel like it looks like a matte lip, which is what I wanted, so that is it. So everything is all matte, everything. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, go ahead and leave me a big thumbs up. I greatly appreciate it. If you're new, please consider subscribing to join my Cake Face family to see more makeup content. And if you are a returning friend, thank you so much for coming back. Alright, love you lots. Mwah. And I will catch you in my next one. Bye guys.